Hi, I'm Alistair Barr from MarketWatch, and I thought the point about the idea of linking the chain together from subprime all the way up through, the investment bankers and the securitization is a good point. And I want to ask Mr. Starkman, what was the first story in your review that you found that was the earliest to link all that together successfully?
Right.
And then I also wanted to ask everyone else what we should do better, in newsrooms to maybe, prevent the silos of beats and thinking beyond your beat.
Great. Yeah, the best job done as the earliest one. This is a piece. I happen to remember the date, March 15th, 2000, by Diana Henriquez and Lowell, that made use of a very important case in California State Court in which borrowers who had been defrauded by a crooked outfit called First Alliance sued First Alliance and Lehman Brothers, and discovery found that Lehman was neck deep in and knew all about the problem. I don't want to put, and that was great. And my problem is that connection was lost for a long period. But I would say that this is the thing. But it was disappointing in the sense that many Wall Street banks were very openly deep into subprime. They had their own subprime retail outfits. All of them did. Anyway, but the linking is the hard thing, and I don't suggest that this is something that anyone can do. And in fact, if you look through the list, there were some wonderful things done about sort of like risks in derivatives and what's these CDOs are going to be a problem and stuff. So I think in looking at sort of the risk part, the FT was I don't know why I'm surprised, but very was very good on this. Journal as well, and Business Week. But you're right that link is sort of the holy grail of what you're looking for. But if you can't do that, I'm just saying go after the Ameriquest and or Bear Stearns, and somebody who puts the link together gets extra credit.
Oh, one way you get the link together, though, is if someone brings a lawsuit and there's discovery.
Right.
I mean, the fact is that there's just a lot of this stuff that you can't find out because you can't get the material, you can't get the information, and if someone leaks you something, your lawyer may tell you you may or may not run it. And there are always all those people, you talk to Bob Schiller and he says, housing will blow up, and then you talk to somebody else who has a wonderfully good reason why housing won't blow up, and if it hasn't blown up yet, you really can't reach something. But this business of trying to get the actual documents, where then you can write that kind of a story,
right.
This takes a regulator, a lawsuit, somebody in Congress who sends you something.
Right.
I mean, because you can't go after Lehman Brothers if you don't have facts in front of you.
Good
you
point.
can't just say, this thing stinks. So this is something where we really are having good links with lawyers, seeing whoever is bringing a lawsuit, immediately calling up that lawyer. Can you get the documents? Seeing everything you can get. These are wonderful resources for the kinds of stories that we want to do. The regulators, lawyers, and to keep your search engine's always going, looking for these kinds of things, because if you could get documents like this, even some tiny little lawsuit, some little county somewhere, all of a sudden can turn up some really fabulous stuff that can open this up. So this is part of the research that we can do, and the web is very helpful. We're getting better and better and more information that we can pull out about this stuff, because you can actually find it now, which used to be very difficult 10 years ago.
Right. The structural stuff was found. I mean, here's one of many quotes like this. This happens to be from Business Week in 2002. Companies have less incentive to make sure the assets they are selling are going to perform. Fee-hungry bankers are less picky than they would be about loans that they keep on their own books. And then the person made a reference to Liar's Poker, which was a best-selling book that was all about this conflict. And I think your point is a very good one. if one can then find a specific that manifests that, I think this is what you're saying also, find a specific that manifests that, you're more likely to get the attention of the people who can do something about it, which are the regulators and the legislators.
Paul, I think if you could make an argument that if we had been able to do a good after-the-fact story about long-term capital and what the government never really told us, we might have had a much better view of what was going to happen in a bigger scale now with the meltdown and the derivatives risk, because that was essentially a cover-up. And I know from a television point of view, it was impossible to do. You had an exterior of the Federal Reserve, maybe of one or two banks. You had to rent a helicopter to even get a picture of the house where John Merriweather, the guy who ran it, lived. And you could shoot the crummy little office building they had in Greenwich, Connecticut, and then you're out of story. So the systemic business you're talking about, to me, goes back to that, at least.
Okay, let's make this the last question or comment over here, because we're running out of time.
Okay, I'm Jill Jordan Spitz. I'm from the Arizona Daily Star, and you all sort of started touching on this, so I'm glad I'm able to ask this. But I'm wondering, if we are to accept the premise that we did our part and we told the stories that needed to be told, and yet the public was insufficiently outraged so as to allow regulators to do basically nothing, it seems to me that says something very grim about our relevance as an industry. And Alan sort of touched on a possible remedy to that as potentially a more deliberate alignment of the editorial and opinion side with, for example, the news side writing a story and then editorial immediately coming back and saying, here's what must be done. But I'm just curious to get some of the other panelists' view on what you think, if there's a way to turn that around to get our relevance back to where it needs to be to sustain us in terms of our role in society.
I would say that one thing, certainly having a global meltdown is going to help. One of the things that produced the consumer movement was a whole series of disasters and people losing their pensions and all these kinds of things. So enough people actually got touched by it that then they started looking a little more systemically and saying what ought to be done. When people think they're doing well, or thinking of the lead up to the 2000 bubble, there was no way you could get somebody to deal with, should there be reserves, should be there this, should we do something about what's going on in the investing world, should there be, because everybody was getting rich. And so then it went down again, and we haven't had a great decade for the average person, but nevertheless, there's been a kind of a carryover that seems to feel that if I work a little harder, maybe I'm going to do okay, and it's it's part of the Kool-Aid that we've been through, that if the individualism, I can do it myself, we don't need government, government's bad, and this has been an attitude of people who have grown up with it, for heaven's sake, for the past 30 years. So as people start to see, wait a minute, this isn't working, I'm really getting hurt, and they take a different view toward government, then they take a different view toward regulation, and this is where then the coverage that we do is also part of that, because now we have something on our side that acts. We report, we try to stir people up, but if you also get the government acting, then the two play together very well.